Um, I've been drawing since I was like a little kid. Um, like it was I like my parents used to get me like that sculpty clay stuff or like the model magic, and I would spend like 8 hours a day just doing that alone. um, and I was as a kid, all my art was like really dark. Like it was a lot of like drawing like ghosts coming out of people and things like that. But as I got older and I started to like analyze myself or like reflect on like who I am as a person and who I want to like grow into and like where my flaws and stuff are, I wanted to start making work that looked at that. Because I don't know, like I'm bad at keeping secrets, so um I guess I wanted to be very open about like where I came from and where I was going. So right now a lot of my work I guess is more culture centered, because I've been doing a lot of like reconnection stuff and reaching out to family and things like that. Yeah, so it's kind of just like what feels relevant to me, and what I feel hasn't, because everybody says like people are way more well versed than me on the subjects I talk about, but it's kind of like my to keep track. It's like a diary to keep track of my journey and like what I think about myself and stuff. I don't know if that makes sense, but
It does, it does.
it depends. Sometimes I'll write them right before I go to sleep at night and then draw them the next day. Um, but sometimes, especially the ones on like lined paper, um, I worked at a paper recycling plant, so I would just steal like any sketchbooks or like notebooks that were being thrown away, and that's where all my supplies come from. So I kind of just write as I go with those, so I don't feel bad about trashing them, and they're a mess inside, but an end product does happen. So it depends on the poem. I have always had kind of like strange interests. Like as a kid, I would only read books if they were about boats, and it led me to a lot of like finding out about like different like mythology surrounding those or superstitions and stuff, and I kind of expand on those like with some of my recent comic work, or I take things that I write about in diaries and try to like extrapolate on the ideas in a way that's less like direct to myself, when it comes to like themes around guilt or sexuality or stuff like that. um, but especially with I've always like been very interested in like mythology and stuff, so that comes up a lot in comics. um um I felt like I wasn't learning what I came to learn, um at Micah, and it's an expensive school. I had like a fair bit of scholarships and things like that, um but eventually I did have to go on like a leave or extended leave or drop out, because I I ran into like some mental health problems, and I was trying to get accommodations for those or to see if, because it was after like we came back from COVID. So there were hybrid classes, and I was like, hey, I'm having some issues. Would it be okay if I completed all my work at home and then sent it in like back when we were fully online? And Micah declined me that, so I was unable to make it work with what I was going through at the time. And then ever since then, I've been kind of, um, just finding my own way and improving, on my skills in the way that I want to, in the directions that I want to. I feel like it made me ask better questions about like what are the specific avenues I want to pursue and like what subjects do I need to learn. A lot of from what I've seen of other art schools too, there's a lot of like there's like the first 2 years are kind of like to catch you up in case you didn't know like what different color schemes were called or things like that. But in like the last year, or so is about like how to find a job and things like that. So it gave me a bunch of questions that I sought out answers for myself. So it was good in that way. Like it directed me to like, to think about like DPI and like print production and things like that. So it was good for like thinking, I guess. It depends on the medium, or like the project. Like when it comes to like a project that maybe is more extensive, like a comic or something along the lines of that, I write out like a general, like what do I want to accomplish within this work? Like how am I going to accomplish it? And then I thumbnail and then sketch and ink. But for most of my art, that's not like super complicated. I just think of what I want to draw and I just go right into it. I don't I'm kind of like I like doing things very quickly. So to get around sketching and drawing the same thing twice, I just do it like right away without an underdrawing. Um which which can be really fun and freeing. Um but also leaves me without like a very long process. A lot of it's on the fly, but a lot of it comes from when I was at Maggie Walker. I did like a series of like posters, and then coach was like, "Oh, these are all like very vertical pieces." And then in my mind, I was like, "So I'm gonna do better than that next time." So now I try to aim for like a lot of times it's the dividing the paper by threes.
Oh, yeah.
It's how I get my composition, where I put like the focus point in 1/3 and then fill in the other 2/3, or vice versa. So classical pieces, I have a hard time understanding, um, or like in that sense, because a lot of them are like so full of information, and a lot of my stuff is a bit less full. So it's kind of like trying to find a way to fill the space in a way that I can do at where I'm at performance wise now. Mm, Well, I started doing ink because I hated filling in dark areas with pencil. I was like, I am just like it looks beautiful and so many people do it, but when I would do it, I would try to do it as fast as possible because I wanted it to be done. I wanted to see what it looked like. So I was like, oh, ink, that it like I was recommended it, and it makes art so much faster when you're trying to fill in areas. Um, so I chose ink because I could put things down as fast as I could. And I chose watercolor because it's cheap. Um, uh, I for years I used like the little like dollar store Crayola packs for all of my art. And I still use those a lot of the time. Um, and it's nice to have supplies that you can just ruin. So that was my way around it. Because I didn't have like a tablet or anything when I was like in high school, so I haven't really branched out into that kind of arena until I got a bit older. I was really stubborn in high school to not do anything but ink.
Oh, me too.
I was I coach, he's so sweet, and he pushed me to do acrylic painting, and I like was so frustrated for the 2 weeks that I did this painting in acrylics, and it didn't look good. But I've I was always hesitant to branch out. I was very stubborn, and then in college, um you have to buy all your supplies in college, and it's super expensive. So instead of doing that, I branched out into finding alternatives, which led me down different like media to use. And I also started using like anything I've ever gotten for like a birthday or a Christmas, like gel pens, highlighters, things like that. Um, so it was just I stole paper from work for my college, so I didn't have to buy those little like packs of like colored paper that are $200.
Ooh.
Um, so all of my reaching out into other media was because I had it at hand, um, and it was easy to get. I don't like faces. Like it's not. I guess it's not part of a process, but whenever it comes to like learning how to shade a face or learning where the eyes go, um or like angles and stuff with that, I have a lot of trouble. like I'm fine with sketching and I'm fine with lining and coloring. It's just when I get to the face, I get like nervous. I'm like, oh God. So I guess it's not part of a process, but it's just what's like the most difficult for me. And I put it off. And you can see when I was like, especially a teenager, like a lot of my art with people looking down and their hair would fall like right over their face, or their hands would be up. So I got really good at hands because I would cover the face with it. But yeah, it's anything that has to do with the face is a hard part of the process. I like honestly it was like the biggest learning experience that I've had like so far when it comes to like doing things in the art world and like drawing and stuff like that. Because it taught me how to follow like a schedule, how to hit deadlines, which are the most important things, like how to answer emails, and then also like at what steps should artists like present their work to the people checking over it when it's on like a commission or like a hired basis, or an example, I guess, of that process, because there's a bunch of different ones. But um, yeah, I think the hardest part about it though, because that was part of the question, I'm like so bad at answering. The hardest part was trying to fit a full story into like 13 to 14 pages. Um, like I had some trouble getting, because I'm a rambler, I go on. So I had a lot of trouble like fitting everything into the page count limit. And I got a lot of help from Alice and Ashanti from that, and they were great. But yeah, that was the most difficult part for me. Um, um, I really like my recent journals on relating to your ancestors, um, because like again, I am on this like because when you are like from a colonized culture, um, reaching back into your history can be like both like a really hard task mentally and like emotionally, and also like when it comes to information it's hard to find that's not been like revised and retold by people who took over your culture. um so like recently, like when it comes to like works about reconnection and finding love in this kind of outlook, I've been really proud of my stuff regarding that. Because it's taken me a while to get there and to think about it in a way that like isn't like the saddest possible answer. Um, so anything that like I've made two comics recently, but anything where it's like people like your culture is there for you to reach out, like the love from your ancestors is there for you if you reach out, like stuff like that is something that I've been really proud of recently. And it's been kind of a turn in my work and in my like mentality as well, where it used to be super negative all the time. But now it's kind of like pessimism is warranted when you are dealing with like colonization and things like that. But it's not the only way to relate to the idea of how your life exists and how it became to exist that way. So finally finding words that can both conceptualize how sad and scary it is, but also the fact that like the love is there and the background is there and it's all there for you, regardless of like the pain that everybody has been through in your family and in your people and in your culture and you personally. Like the fact that you can reach out with love and love will reach back is really extraordinary. And like anything I write about that is some of my favorite work, because it's just a reminder, because I'll get in my own head about stuff and get super sad. But it's like joy is like a big factor of reclamation and things like that, which I think is like very important when you go into any kind of like looking back on family history or cultural history, because it can be really dark. So it's I don't know anything. I wrote a recent one about, and it went I wrote a recent one about ancestors recognizing you and loving you no matter like where you are at in your life. And that's probably my favorite one that I've written so far. Yeah, just like draw all the time, draw whenever you can, like love what you do. Loving the process is more important than a good final result. Um, do things that you like because people will see what you like and they'll be in for it even if they don't know what it is. Um,